So Ernie pulls up and says, hey, quickly, your father. And then it turns out that he's had a stroke. So the dad has had a stroke, and that means that, being the responsible person he is,
yeah, he has to
George has to step on in and take over the building society. And he's like, okay, I'm going to stay here for like 4 years until my brother comes back. I'm sending him to college or to university. And when he comes back, he's going to take over. And then I'll go off and have my trip. It turns out that all of the shareholders at this point basically are saying that, no, we're going to turn over the business to Potter. Oh, actually, I should change the scene. Oh, scene change. Act 2. We find out that Potter is basically trying to buy all of the shares of the Building Society to close it down. He wants not only to take it away from everybody or make it corrupt like the bank is effectively, but he wants to shut it down and close everybody's mortgages, foreclose on people effectively. I think he gave one example of, I think it was Ernie asking for a loan for a mortgage to build a house that he was, not able to pay back legitimately. And he was like, you need to foreclose on them. You need to get your money back. How evil. So we get to the point where George is just like, look, I'm going. I don't give a shit. I'm going to be leaving. I have my suitcase full. I've been stopped so many times before.
Just like
nothing's going to happen.
At the door, and I'm like, and then your man just says that just one little phrase that just pisses him off. He's like, right, again, this scene, he doesn't just like, Jimmy Stewart doesn't just like go off on one. His dialogue here fucking rises perfectly to where you see him getting upset. Jamie, sorry, this guy is just a fucking, I thank you so much for letting me watch this movie because I love this guy acting now. Fucking
He has
love
some really good tension here that's just very subtle, but, it's subtle but obvious in a weird way.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about this as well is that it's preachy without being preachy. That kind of way. It has a message that it's character driven. That's what all of these messages nowadays that are put into films about, being a nice person or whatever way you want to be construed about that, is that it just pops in there. Let's plop in people being nice, or telling people to be nice for no apparent reason. It makes as much sense as like G.I. Joe telling you not to take drugs. It's like those two things don't really come into my mind at the same time. So when they force this preachy attitude onto characters, it just feels false and two-dimensional. But when a character like this is basically expressing what you've already gone through, how far are we into it at this point? We're only a half an hour into the film and you're already feeling that gut-wrenching kind of, yeah, George is right. He should be standing up for the town. Damn right. Fuck Potter. And Potter's only been in like 2 scenes. But what I like, and I keep on saying it until it's not relevant anymore, is that the stereotypes, when done properly in these films, are perfect. I didn't need to see Potter's backstory. I didn't need to see the dad sitting there giving out loans every single day and the people coming up and going, oh, I don't have, Mr. Bailey, I don't have enough money to feed my children. It's like all implied because you just get the sense of these characters.
I do see when he's a child, when George Bailey's a child, he walks up, and I noticed because I was like, wow, like when he walks up, he pushes Potter. Like he walks up and says, because your man's obviously, I was like, wow. I said, and then his father comes, because it's funny because he, just for that split second, he breaks out of a child, becomes like a man, and then his father brings him aside and explains to him, and he becomes a child again.
Well, what's cool about this is that, like, you see, I think there's about 3 or 4 times when George confronts Mr. Potter and is pissed off with him, and that's what makes one of the scenes later on in the film even more
special.
It makes more of an impact later on when it actually happens. So it turns out that the board will only vote not to dissolve the buildings and loan if George is the one to take up the chairman of the business, basically. It is a dilemma. Another dilemma is it's like a moral, like, it's not right or wrong. It's, he isn't making a choice about what's right and what's wrong. It's a choice of what's moral and what's not moral? Am I going to leave all of these people get their mortgages snatched away by Potter, or am I going to and basically head off and do the thing that I've always wanted to do in my life, or am I going to stay here and make sure at the very least the place survives? For those 4 years that my brother's not here, at least I'll be able to get out of this place when my brother's back. He thinks sillily.
But again, it's him sacrificing his hopes, and a lot of this is him sacrificing for the greater good.
And the greater good is what is, and that's what something we'll come back to. I'm going to go and get another beer, but you talk about the crow. Do you notice the crow in this?
I did notice the crow.
I'll be back.
Is this a running theme in our picks?
He's going to do this. But no one's talking about it but him. He just is constantly bringing it up every.
I did notice the crow though. Did you pay attention to the crow?
I did, but I didn't think of it as in the crow was. It was something in the movie.
To me, the first time I saw the crow, it was like, oh, that's the angel watching. But I
didn't think anything of it. I just thought the man like fucking animals going around. Now, what I did think with the fact that the animals are really fucking well trained was when he was talking, the crow flew to your man's arm, but Jimmy didn't actually he walked. I say I know the guy Jimmy, but when he was walking toward, he didn't stop walking as the crow flew past him and landed, man. He just kept walking.
Yeah.
Crows the greatest movie that's ever happened. Oh, sorry, Jimmy. How you doing? How are you?
Oh, sorry. Hi, guys. What were you talking about?
I was saying.
We're talking about the crow?
I thought maybe the crow was the angel watching, but it seemed then to be the uncle's pet. So I wasn't really too sure on that.
I've always watched this film and wondered, what the hell is that? Is that the kind of quote unquote kind of vulture effectively? Is that because you see it in these times of strife effectively when George is going through these difficult decisions when he's an adult. It does turn out to be his uncle having this weird obsession with all these animals that could definitely have rabies, and maybe that's why the uncle is a bit mad, is because he has a bit of rabies going on. He squirrels walking up on top of him while he's asleep. And you turn, in the alternate universe, basically, where it turns out George was never born, it turns out he went to a mental hospital. So it just tells you a lot about this character. But it is unusual to have that, crow. Is it a crow or a raven? I think it's a crow.
It's a raven.
I thought it was a crow.
Is a raven a writing desk?
When is a raven a writing desk? What?
No. Yeah. When Poe writes on both. Ah, see.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the unanswerable question that was answered. So George takes it upon himself basically to take over the building alone, and we then get a trip back up to the heavens to see the universe, and Clarence commenting on George's life up until that point. And it's a nice kind of drawback to what we're, again, just a reminder, this is what's happening, by the way. It's a nice little reminder about what's happening in the film. It's a catch-up without having to be, completely obvious about it, effectively.
Yeah.
So we then come back to Bedford Falls at the train station, and they're waiting for the brother to come home. George is really excited the fact that finally I get to leave Bedford Falls because my brother's coming home. He's going to take over the business. I'll be gone. Nothing surprising is going to happen. There's nothing that can surprise me now at this point. So the brother comes back with a lovely wife.
A lovely wife.
George is kind of explaining, I like the way, again, just his character. He doesn't seem like a pussy or anything, that kind of way. You expect a character that gets walked all over, quote unquote walked all over, is kind of whipped by everybody.
Yeah.
He's kind of doing things according to what he should do, not what he wants to do.
But I think that's what keeps you endeared to him. You're not looking at someone who is being browbeaten. You're looking at someone who is actively making the right decision.
Yes, he's a strong person,
That
and
keeps you on his side throughout the whole movie.
it would be a very different story if George wasn't man enough to speak back or, say no to other things. Like, you can see that he can stand up for himself. And in doing so, it gives him that vulnerability when he does the right thing. You're like, wow, what an even better person, because he was so strong in those
Yeah.
situations, but yet he could be so vulnerable and say, you know what? No, I'm gonna take the back seat in this situation. And then it's another time when he does it. Basically, his brother comes back with a wife. Hey, by the way, I got married, and George is like, oh right, okay, and how are you? Oh, what am I talking about? Oh, come here, come here. And even a situation where you've basically taught that, oh, that's going to be a little bit controversial. No, they're all fine with it, basically. Everybody's fine. It's still lovely. Happy families.
Yeah, but I like the fact that they didn't dwell on too much. That's what one thing I like about this movie. They don't dwell on things. They put it to you, and some stuff should be talked a little bit more about. But the fact that they're just like, right, we're going to show you this now. We're going to move on. You do what you want with it. Like the whole wife thing.
What else should be talked about?
Oh God, we'll go further. When it comes to it, I'll talk about it.
Okay. So
Um,
the mother, or sorry, the wife is basically like, oh yeah, he's coming. My dad's in love with him. He got him a new job. And then George is like, oh, what? What's this about a new job? Sorry, it was probably my bad ear.
His heart sink straight away. Like
Mm-hmm.
that again,
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart, just that little bit of emotion says so much, and you see it straight away. You're like, oh, there's his dreams again.
Yeah, what a shitty position. And it's, again, like it's the rug pulled out from under your feet again. And it's not like you don't expect this to happen, but when it does happen, it's happening in a surprising way.
Yeah.
But I love
You
how
know?
you see him. I love how you see him make, like we were saying, he's not that he like gets walked over. He makes these conscious decisions to do the right thing. And every time he makes a conscious decision, they don't gloss over. You see him do it. And you're like, that's what makes you again. You're like, well, fair fucking play, pal. Again, like
He
you're
never
going like,
asks for
yeah,
anything in
anything.
return.
No.
And I think that's a big build up towards the ending.
Yeah. Of course.
But
Of
at the
course.
same time, he is arrogant and he's a bit narcissistic. Like when he talks about the crappy old house, he's like, I'd never fucking live in that place. Like, that's a piece of crap. Like,
He's
he
such a
doesn't
nice guy.
have. But that's what makes him a kind of flawed character, and that's why he's actually flawed insofar as being a bit of an asshole, and you're like, oh wow, the world has done that to him. These events that we've seen have done that to him. It's not he's done
Yeah.
that to himself. You actually see that his kind of downfall in a way as well, and it's
Yeah.
not thrown in your face. It's not like highlighted. It's actually told to you in a story format. Oh my god!
Yeah, like you
Shock
know he's
horror.
not an asshole.
Exactly. You're probably defending him.
You can totally understand why he's acting the way he's acting. It's like, God, this dude's been trampled on over and over and over again. I'd be feeling pretty moody as well.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
having a bowl of ice cream with that one. But the repetition of how many times he's been screwed over for his one goal, and that's the big thing about it as well. It's not just his want to get away, but it's actually he wants to travel. And I like the way throughout the course of the movie, it's like he literally names different places all the time. You don't care. He doesn't care where he goes. He just wants to go. He just wants to leave. So we have a lovely party, a kind of a wedding party back at the Bailey house, and everybody's having a good old time. The mom is there. This is cool because you see the inverse of this. It's like the what in Star Trek when they go to the mirror universe and everybody's wearing a mustache, and you kind of like everybody's like the inverse of what had already been established effectively. And this happens with like the mom. The mom in this is like the nicest mom in the world. She's like small and she's like cooking all the food. I think Are they meant to be like an Italian kind of a family or something like that, or maybe not Italian? Maybe like it gives that vibe, you know, big family atmosphere, like an Irish family, maybe something like that.
Bailey.
An English family sounds like an English.
I thought it was just American. I didn't think too much into it, to be honest with you.
But so we get like the exchange with the uncle.
Best scene in the movie.
Like
what an acting job! What a fucking acting job!
Hey, you and me, buddy, we're the best. And
in the right direction.
This way, okay, this way. And I love the way when his mom comes out and George is like, okay, well, better go home. He mimics that. He does that again. I don't know. It's kind of like
the interaction between himself and the mom when he puts his arm around her and stuff. It's fucking beautiful acting again. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, that little.
Trivia. I got trivia.
Oh, do tell me the trivia.
She plays his mother in about 4-5 movies. And this is the 4th time she plays.
Do you know what the names of those movies are?
The one that you mentioned a while ago.
Harvey.
No, the V one.
Vertigo.
Did I post it yesterday? No, I posted the Cary Grant one yesterday. I will be putting it up
on our Twitter. On our Instagram. On Instagram. Follow
Beulah
Instagram.
Bondi, I think is her name. But
yep, you're right.
She played his mother about 5 times, and this is the 4th. So the chemistry there definitely has been built up over time, I would say.
They do look like a loving mother and daughter, like a mother and son, isn't it?
It's adorable.
You'd never get that nowadays. Like, unless someone's, like, we'll go back to Spider-Man again, like Marissa Tomei's playing him in 3 movies she's playing Aunt May, but you'd never get the same actress playing someone's mom in multiple movies nowadays. Never, ever have it.
Well, most people's mums nowadays look like they're in their 20s, so, you know, this is like, oh, let me introduce you to my mom, and she's 60 and she bakes cookies. It's like, nowadays, it's like, let me introduce you to my mom, and it's like hot pants and leopard skin, top, blouse, you know, that kind of way, big hair. She's in her 60s, but she looks like 30. So George goes away, like the uncle, and he walks into town and sees the adventurous woman being chatted up by 2 men on the side of the street. How adventurous of her. Am I right, Darren?
Yeah.
Adventure.
And then
her word when she sees him, she's talking, all of a sudden she goes, oh.
I love the guy with the mustache. We'll be right here waiting for you, baby. It's like saddest bunch of bastards ever. Imagine that. Be like, we're waiting for you, baby. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. You can come back to us anytime.
You know, when they were talking on their own, the 2 of them, Jimmy and herself, and then when they finished the conversation, where did all the people come from?
This is the other side of it. I was like, that's a time before phones. When literally everybody was like, oh, there's an argument happening in the middle of nowhere. Oh, let's crowd around.
Right next. Yeah.
So she wanders up to George and goes, my moment to strike. So she's like, hey, George, come on, let's go for a night on the town. And he's like, yeah, let's climb a mountain and run in a field barefoot. And she was like, I don't want to run in a field barefoot. What the fuck are you talking about? So that reminds me of modern. That's modern ladies nowadays. No, that's Theresa May. Let's run in a cornfield or a wheat field. But yeah, she's just like, that's. It's kind of like the superficial world, which is what's her name? I completely forget her name. Violet, well done. Gloria Graham. Violet is like the superficial world, and Mary is like the real world. You know, she's even when it comes to a little bit later on where they have the dinner in the crappy old house, it's like that's her idea. You know, her idea at the end saves everybody. You know, she's the realistic, grounded person, and George is actually the fantasy one. She's the dreamer.
Yeah. But she even comes back at the end.
The one, yeah. The adventurous lady. She comes back. George then kind of wanders around. I think he's talking to his mom actually, and was like, "Oh yeah, that Mary was looking for you," and he was like, "Oh, I guess I'll go down there and see what she's up to." So he stands outside her house, beating the fence with a stick. Right? Again, a time before mobile phones. It's like you can't just text somebody. You're like, "What are you doing outside beating that fence with a stick?" Someone's already called Mary, I think, to say that George will be over, effectively.
His mother.
His mother? You've seen that Mary's drawn him this awesome picture. The George lasso the moon. I love that. It looks like a really cool drawing as well. Like, imagine someone drawing that for you, and she's like absolutely delighted with it. And this is one of those moments where I'm just like, again, as a guy, maybe it's, I just like, what an asshole. I've seen those boyfriends before.
As a girl too, that was definitely there. I had to suspend disbelief a little bit to believe that Mary was still in there with him, like, and still trying to get him to stay because, she's a strong girl and most women would have kicked him out by now. It's like, well, if you don't want to be here, just go.
Get out! But she actually forgives him a lot, basically. She's kind of like trying to make him a little bit happier, but it doesn't happen. So
it says like 50 times, who told you I'd be over? I never told anyone I'd be over.
Yeah, I never said I'd be over here.
I think that's very much, that came across as him being very distracted.
He was very distracted.
Yeah, but that also to me was a brilliant acting job because you can see the progression from him being a nice young fella to being a nice adult, and then he's slowly but surely. But he's not like pissed off. It's a difference. It's just he's fed up, I think, more before he gets. But like then again, that shows how good of an actor he is. The fact that he could get that progression, there's fucking levels, and he just shows it all over.
But it is a shift in the character that you've come to know. We're like again 40 minutes into the film. And it's a shift in the character that you got to know, but you can see why he's sad. And he does a good job of doing it in a way that's tempered. It's not like, okay, Jimmy, your character is sad and he's angry, and then it's just you could see, like you said, Darren, that development over that kind of course, effectively. She's turned on a bit of music, the song that they were singing. He's like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, shut up. Like,
well, I love when she just sings it randomly to him. She just like goes sing a lyric and he looks at her.
By the light of the moon. And he's like, what are you talking? Oh yeah, that song. Yeah. Well, shut up. Ignores the picture. She's like trying to get his attention, and he's having none of it. Then the mother comes down the stairs and like, who's that down there? It's like, it's George Bailey. George Bailey? I don't want you going out with that George Bailey chap. I want you to go out with this rich guy, Sam, the guy in plastics. And then she turns around and he's like, what's he doing down there? And then he goes, he's down here making violent love to me. I love violent love making. Violent. And she just responds going like, what did she say afterwards? She's clearly like just not listening at all, going, whatever, just speak to Sam on the phone, the plastics man.
Sam is going to phone you. She's ignored him.
She obviously just a cheeky bitch all the time. Like,
yeah. Cheeky bitch. What a cheeky bitch. George goes to leave, and then Mary calls him back going, oh, your good friend Sam wants to have a chat with you. And then he gets on the phone. We get the introduction of, oh, Sam, or George, yeah, that thing. That kind of little reminding bell, effectively. And he's trying to tell him to put all of his money into plastics. Which is a big thing at the time. This is actually before World War II. After World War I, plastics is kind of like it's like Bitcoin. It was the 1920s version of Bitcoin. So you find out later he doesn't take it. He actually doesn't go for the offer, but it gets him and Mary to have a little bit of an intimate moment. He sniffs her hair, gives a little bit of sniff at hair, and
it's the weird.
And then
like,
they have
what's going on. That was the thing back then. That weird fucking hugging, kissing all over her head and stuff. Like every actor did that, and that the whole like moving her head against there was no like. That was what they called passionately kissing years ago.
Right. It is like a distressing kiss thing. Like, yeah, he's
And the
kissing
mother
her.
looks like he's stabbing her to death.
Sacrilege. I love the way she's on the phone upstairs as well while they're having the conversation. She's like, "Mother, get off the phone." It's a very, again, one of those passionate kisses, effectively. Rarely do you get a passionate kiss nowadays like that. If you seen that, you'd be like, God, someone's assaulting that woman. So when we get to the part pretty much afterwards, they're married. It's just as quick as that. You might as well. The mother obviously seen them kissing and was like, well, I better get the wedding arrangement sorted.
That cut I found a little bit weird. I mean, I didn't need it to be all explained to me or anything, but it went from like her accepting that her accepting that he can be an asshole sometimes to them being married. Maybe.
I think it's at the time as well, like when there wasn't that much mystery about who you're going to get married to. You're pretty much going to get married to the person in your hometown, and as soon as you've seen how they were together at the dance, I think the audience has already presumed the other girl is not going to be the one he goes with.
The whole movie is built up to it, and it was just part. I think everyone's accepted it. If it didn't happen, there would have been something wrong.
It's the nowadays equivalent of having the not gays. You know the not gays? Did you ever hear the not gays?
Yes.
With Bill and Ted, they have the not gays where they have to have girlfriends, even though the girlfriends don't do anything. You have to, because two guys on a screen together, our modern interpretation of films, or maybe back in the 90s more so, or the 80s or whatever, you just thought, wow, there's some pretty good friends up there. I wonder if they have girlfriends. So it was like that equivalent where back in the day where you seen a love interest and a boy together, you're like, okay, well, they're going to get married, obviously, because, they ain't looking anywhere else. And all the other ladies are sluts. Or adventurous, sorry.
Yeah.
Adventurous ladies. Indiana Jones ladies. So they get married, and we are introduced within that scene of happiness. Oh, by the way, there's a financial crash. And this is the, what do they call it? The stock market crash, basically.
There's a run on the bank.
And everybody's basically, at this time, everybody's running to the banks to get all their money out. We seen it. We actually saw something like that during the recession. People hanging outside of all of these banks, especially over in the UK, literally lines of people being like, yeah, I want to withdraw all of my money now, please. And
that was when NatWest was rumoured to crash or something, wasn't it? I think it was NatWest.
Yeah, and what's that?
Yeah.
Northern Rock?
That was sorry.
Bank. So what is basically, what happens in these situations for a financial crash, it's a snowball effect. So once people get scared that the banks are going to lose their money effectively because they've invested so much, the people go to withdraw the money, but then the bank has less money, and then it goes ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, and then the bank is gone. So that's what was basically happening at this time. And we see that George has $2,000 in solid cash to go off and actually finally get his world trip with his gorgeous wife Mary. And even that he can't even do. It's like if he had left 2 hours beforehand, maybe it would have been fine. But nope, he has to do the right thing. And Mary's like, no, please don't get out of the cab. Stop doing the right thing.
Sorry, I thought you'd skipped ahead, but yeah, I was going to say that it's actually this time it was Mary kind of preempting and making that decision for him at the end of it all.
There is that kind of capstone. That's where you think they should have gotten married. Absolutely, they're right for each other. You know, that kind of way.
She gets him. Like, she knows he wants to do this, but you know he'd be torn. So she's just like, I'm just going to make this decision and give the money.
Well, it's not even that. It's, I think she also feels that way. You know, it's not like she's doing that. Like the contrast between this and Christmas, Nightmare Before Christmas. Sally isn't rescuing Santa, or Sally isn't doing things in the movie to help Jack. She's doing things to basically obstruct him and to fix things that she thinks are wrong. Whereas in this film, they're kind of like on the same... They're on the same level, morality-wise. It's just that Mary doesn't have these moral callings in her life, effectively.
Yeah.
You know, it's just George has these things. Everybody else has their own stuff to deal with, but this is George's story. But you feel like if Mary was in the same position, she would do the same thing. You know, that kind of way. Whereas the other one, Violet, wouldn't. You know, she'd just be like, no, I want to go off and spend the money. So that's your kind of comparison given to you without having that explained, basically. So the financial crash has happened. We see the bird again. We see that raven again. So again, this is kind of a bad omen sign. You know, it is a kind of a weird one. I've never really looked into it. If anybody knows about it, do feel free to comment and you know, mention it. But why is that crow there? Who knows? I know it's because the uncle loves all the weird birds and squirrels and everything. But why? Why is it there at that particular moment and on other moments? It's a bit of an unusual one. So we find out that Potter, the banker, is fully aware of this crash, and he's like, yep, I'm going to lose a buttload of money. But then the way that people worked then was, if you were so rich that you could take the financial hit and still have enough money, you could buy up all of the companies. If you think about it, because all the stocks drop, everybody's stock reduces down to fuck all, and then you still have money enough to buy up all of those companies that by the time the economy starts growing again, you literally own everything. Whoop. Oh no, my beer. Darren?
I was actually interested in what you were saying. The stock drops like Jamie's beer.
Like my beer.
So essentially is like what Potter has probably built his whole career on.
Well, he's slimy. Again, you get another example of him just being this slimy banker type, effectively.
Yeah.
So
like Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins is a little bit different because the dad in that was actually a nice person. He was just like completely.
No, I'm not talking about the dad. I'm talking about like the other bankers trying to take the money off and trying to make him.
No, but at the end they learn to fly a kite and they're fine. Let's fly a kite. The Potter doesn't have a kite at the end. Potter is like an asshole. Actually, he takes that money and nothing ever bad happens to him. He's actually money. He's quids up. Technically, he gets away scot-free. No, nothing bad happens to him. He's fine. So Potter basically is blackmailing George, and he's saying, if your building and loan closes before 6 p.m., that's it. It's gone. It's dissolved.
Yeah.
And Potter is effectively buying up all of the stock. And he's saying, okay, what you do is you tell all of the people that are coming to you to get their money to come to me, and I'll buy all their shares for 50 cents on the dollar. Which is like half, effectively, of all the shares. So he would own the building and loan, effectively. Because that's the way it works with the building society. You're effectively buying shares into the company, isn't it?
Yeah.
So George is like, okay, I'm stuck in a rock and a hard place. What am I going to do? And then everybody rushes in and decides to take their money out. What assholes. I just want to say that. That guy at the start is like, I have $242 and I want to take out $242. I'm like, what a bastard.
But you can kind of see it because that's what everyone else in the whole like city or town or whatever is doing. So he's as afraid as everyone else.
But it's this herd mentality, you just
Oh
feel
no,
that.
absolutely. Not saying he's right, but I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah. And then your one says, what do you really need? Well, I need $150. No, what do you need to survive? I'll take $20. Such a drastic change. And then your one
I
says,
love that part. I need $17.50. Oh, give it a kiss.
You
Well. But you find out that Mary basically offers up the $2,000 that they were going to use for their honeymoon as collateral for paying everybody off.
Yeah. I didn't get that when I saw it first. I didn't. I was wondering where the fuck did he get the $2,000? I thought he just had it because I know he had it on him.
Thanks, Clarence.
Yeah, but then I saw when he went back to the place and she had all the stuff up on the walls. Oh, okay, she had a plan. Okay.
Yeah. So you're kind of like, they were kind of meant to be, basically.
Yeah.
There is a very heartwarming speech at this part, and I love it because he's saying basically, I can't give you your money because your money is in his house and his money is in his house. And remember that renovation you did on your house? That's his money over there. So it's this kind of like, I'm here to facilitate the reorder of the money. I'm here to help you guys. I'm not here to charge you. I'm not here to, this isn't a business. It's a kind of a necessity within society. And I've stood up to the plate to do that. Can you not respect that effectively? So that's when you get people dropping off where they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, you know what? I just need like my $17.50. They managed to close with having $2, and
they put a daddy dollar,
a mummy dollar and a daddy dollar. They put them in a little thing, and they put it in the safe for them to procreate, have little baby dollars, little cents. Mary then decides that it would be a great idea to have their own little honeymoon. And Burton, Ernie, and all the gang decide to chip in and effectively help Mary set up a dinner in the old abandoned house that they threw the stones at, and they call it the bridal suite. Jimmy Stewart is kind of shocked effectively, and I love. There's a part in it where like there's water dropping down from the ceiling, and he steps around it. Did you notice that? Where he's like dropping and he steps around. It's just those small little things in a film that make the character and the film effectively. I really enjoyed that part.
That little sense of realism.
Small little thing. And again, these old films, you kind of only get to really see it in the coloured version, I guess. But this is one thing that I do like about the coloured version is that you get to see the blooms of the hair, that super colorified, what would you call it? The saturation is turned up to 11 basically of it. And they start singing outside. Bert and Ernie start singing outside, and then they have like a little what would you call it? Like a
moment.
Yeah, like a Three Stooges moment where actually there's a really cool part. There's a really fun part in it where Jimmy Stewart gets brought into the house and
leans back.
Ernie leans back and his hat tips up, and then Jimmy Stewart nods, and then the water comes down, and then he comes. I was like, that is fucking magical. That's magical. Whether it was something ad-libbed or not, that scene was just like, yes. You don't get that's why you need a physical set, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you need your actors on a physical set. Because they interact with the set. You can't do that in a CGI fucking green screen room where you can't lean on things. There's no room for improv or ad-lib because it's all Nothing.
But there's no dialogue. There was very little dialogue in the whole scene. And like it was all just movement. Like even when he's walking around, and even when he's looking at the stairs and he's looking, you can see the posters on the walls. It just fucking everything added to that. It was fucking like obviously when the scene started when your man walked, when his hat tipped up, I was like, that's fucking amazing.
But
So good.
I like that little bit of slapstick comedy. It's that's effectively what it is. It's like it's like a Marx Brother or whatever. So we now get the kind of the progression of George staying now with the Building Society. We kind of understand that he's never going to go and travel effectively, but he's created a whole estate of homes for people. And one of the homes that he's created is for Mr. Martini, which is like this Italian immigrant kind of family. And they're welcoming them to their new home with, wine, bread, and salt. So you can see that
he got in. You notice when it's funny because I'd say basically when the kids got in and all of a sudden the goat jumped in, I was like, a fucking goat. But you see how quickly Jimmy Cagney jumped to get the goat's fucking horns because it was going to poke the fucking child.
Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Cagney. Fucking Jimmy Cagney.
You'll never catch me, coppers!
It was, but yeah, I was watching that and I had to check that bit out.
I thought it was Donna Reed. I thought it was Mary that grabbed the horns first because that's what struck me first.
No, Jimmy
you guys are such parents.
He went to grab the horn, one grabbed and she pulled him. Ah, Jamie, Jesus.
Someone went to grab a horn. Kids. I don't care. Well, they're all dead now, so it doesn't matter. So we realize that Jimmy Stewart is doing even above and beyond what his dad was able to do. Created a whole estate full of people that are now paying their own mortgage for themselves, and probably they don't have the money to stay in these houses, but he's still going out of his way to do so. This financial guy comes in to Mr. Potter, is like, I've been warning you for years. This Bailey, what is it? What's the name of the estate? Like Bailey
Bonds and Loans.
No, what's the name of the estate that they make?
Bailey Park, is it?
Bailey something anyway.
Bailey Park.
So the Mr. Potter effectively is like, okay, everybody's leaving my rented properties to live in their own places, and I'm getting shit from it. I'm getting diddly squat. So he hatches a plan. He decides to do something about that. That doesn't really happen. That kind of lands in his lap effectively.
Yeah.
So we get the guy with this is the plastics man arrives. He's like, hey, I made shitloads of money in plastics and you didn't sign up for it, so nah. That's the yeehaw guy. Yeehaw!
And they do it again. He does it again. His wife does it when she's in the car with him.
Yes.
Yeehaw! What are you fucking doing, you weirdo?
So
but again, bring back.
So Mr. Potter invites George over and he's like, okay, he's a force to be reckoned with now at this point. I'm going to use him instead of trying to smash him effectively. So he's like, hey, I want you to come work with the bank. And you'll be on like $45,000 a year, which is fucking crazy money at that time.
$20,000 a year.
Was it $20,000 a year, is it?
$20,000, yeah.
But which is, again, crazy money at the time. It's like, you can see now the manipulation taking hold. So all this time you can see, okay, George is probably going to come in here kicking and screaming if I try and do anything manipulative. Like, if I become adversarial towards him. So I'll offer him a job and I'll basically undermine him from the outset. You can see George being a little bit gullible to this and falling into the trap effectively. It's great acting again by Jimmy Stewart. The fact that you could see his like facial expressions like calm and everything and like getting along chummy, and as soon as he shakes Mr. Potter's hand, like he feels the greasy slime of a deal that he's made.
He wipes his hand off, sure.
That's like I feel dirty.
Yeah, straight away. He's like, I'm gonna need about 24 hours to think about it. And then he shakes his hand. He's like, no, I'm not even gonna need 24 hours to think about it. I'm gonna need 1 hour to think about it. I was like, that's a no. So he takes the cigar and like he goes to look at it and throw it away. He's like, you know what, I'm fucking taking this. So he goes back to his lovely old wife.
He abuses everyone in the room. Like, your man, listen,
yes,
you.
And you too.
And you too.
I love that. So he goes home and he's like, he's feeling a little bit shitty. But then your one is awake and she starts singing that song. The by the light of the moon. And she reveals she's preggers. There's a bun in the oven. There's a little Jimmy on the way.
But he says is it a girl or a boy? She says, yes.
Yes.
That is the best answer to that question I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad I never got to use it.
So
I always said it's a baby. Or no, I got, do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? It's a baby.
It's a baby.
It's some sort of a fetus for a human. So what happens at this part? Has a baby, and then we get to the part where he's going to, well, the oh no, wait. Yeah, we kind of get it like it's a little bit of a montage. I think
they have 4 kids, like.
They have 4 kids.
Of a sudden, she has a baby, and then all of a sudden, and then they had 3 more.
Yeah, they had 3 more, and then his brother got a medal, the Congressional Medal of Honor in World War II. And then George stayed at home and, did rubber drives and did all this boring shit effectively. He didn't even get to contribute a whole lot.
But it turned out that because he didn't do it because of his ear, he was held back.
His ear. Yeah, something he did in the benefit of somebody else stopped him from what I bet he wanted to as well. It's like he seems like the kind of character, I want to fight for my country.
Yeah.
So now it's Christmas. So we're about an hour and 15 minutes into the movie, and now we've actually only gotten to, if you want to think about it, the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're only we've only gotten to this part through explaining the character, explaining the motivations, explaining the backstory, explaining how he got his wife and his brother and all of the characters that will actually come into it on the end. The rest of the film is only about an hour long, so it's a 2-parter film. The setup of the character and then the motivations of the character when it starts introducing this angel character. This kind of real film up until this point where real things were happening with a narration by these angels up in the sky that you don't really get to see is broken now. We're doing that Twilight Zone moment effectively. Yeah, we're getting to the point where now it's Christmas time and everybody got to pay up for the year, I imagine. The uncle
goes to the bank.
Well, we get the setup that this bank inspector, this audit guy is coming along, and George is not too plussed to see him there anyway. So the uncle goes into the bank, has about $8,000 in solid cash.
$8,000.
$8,000. $8,000. And he meets Mr. Potter in the bank. He's having a chat about the brother getting the Congressional Medal, I believe. And the uncle basically just puts the $8,000 in the newspaper and then slaps Mr. Potter with the newspaper. And he goes, yeah, you stupid fool. Ha 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 ha. Mr. Potter is angry and pissed off, and he goes into his back room and opens up the newspaper. He's like, I have $8,000. He's like, I have all this money. So he goes to peer outside the door to see the uncle going up to the teller, and the teller's like, yeah, normally you kind of give something to me at this point. And he's like, yeah, oh, it's in my jacket. And he's like, oh, it's not in my jacket. And he starts rushing around the place, frantically looking for the money. The adventurous lady walks into George, and she's like, I want to escape. I want to break out of this town. And he's like, yeah, I kind of know the feeling. And gives her some money. So it's like one of those small little things as well. I like that. It's not really, this really isn't integral to the plot effectively, but it's a character that's there that sustains the narrative, if you know. It's like a girder beam, the scaffolding.
Again, it shows that he's a good guy, and that's just a small little bit that he's always doing his bit for society.
Well, it's not even for society. It's like he does stuff selfishly and doesn't look for anything in return. Like, she's technically wanted to exploit George because he's a good-looking, popular guy, not for anything else, not for his personality. You know, that
she wanted the D. Or she wants
the D. She wants the D. Who wouldn't? Jimmy Stewart. Oof.
Yeah.
What a man.
Give me the Jimmy D.
The Jimmy D. So the uncle rushes back and is like, I lost the money. I've lost all of our money, by the way. We're fucking gone. And Jimmy's like, okay, or George is going to be like, okay, we're going to be put in prison for this, and we'll get bankrupt and run throughout the whole entire town. It's not going to be a fun time, so let's retrace our steps. So the uncle starts having a bit of a cry, and he's like, I have no idea where I put the money. I'm so sorry. And George goes home. Bit of a broken man, in fairness.
But this is acting. I have to say, from where he's like trying to just be calm and help him, but all of a sudden he fucking loses it. And I was like, to be able to go from calm to fucking that is fucking brilliant. That's really seems good. Well,
I was just about to say, I like the way they make him look older by putting those silver wings in his hair.
Yes.
You know, he actually does look a little bit older with them on. He looks aged, you know, and again, that's like half acting, half makeup.
Yeah.
You know, he looks weathered because of just his brow and his demeanor and everything, and holy shit.
A bit of shadow and...
Yeah, it's great. You know, the profession of acting has lost that to CGI.
Yes.
You know, even in things like Star Trek, The Next Generation, there was still a lot of makeup and a lot of plastic and stuff like that, but you still got to hunched over. You still got to look old and everything. Nowadays, you can just basically stick someone's face on an old person and just be like, yep, now run along there, old man. You know, acting is failed.
You can Martin Scorsese it. That's what I call it.
What's that?
You fucking Irishman.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, don't ever.
Is it bad?
Like, ever.
But I like Joe Pesci.
Oh, do you know what it was, Jamie? It was, as a movie, I didn't like it at all. And everyone, like people who are fans of Martin Scorsese were like, no, it was just an excuse, which I didn't realise it was his first time ever working with Pacino. I never knew that. But it was just a final hurrah for these guys to be on screen together. That's all.
They all croaked it.
Yeah, but before they all died. But that's what it was. Like, as a movie, it's not a good fucking movie. It's really not a good movie. Like, don't get me, Joe Pesci's great. Love him acting. But yeah, as a movie, but it wasn't good. It really...
He's no Jimmy Stewart.
Like 3 fucking hours. He's no Jimmy Stewart.
No Jimmy Stewart. 3 hours, that's a bit of a fucking slog, isn't it?
And you know what's funny? Anyone who loves these guys, loves the director, loves the writer, always took, like, people who I've talked to have saying, oh, it took me like a week to watch it, and I watched it in one sitting.
It took me a week to watch it.
It did. Yeah, stuff. But it was like, I watched it in one sitting. But you realise it was 3 hours. It was the longest.
This is a 2-hour film. It didn't feel like a 2-hour film.
I didn't feel it was 2 hours.
Nope, not at all. It's amazing. And again, I think it's, and like the whole entire screen time is taken up by Jimmy Stewart. There's basically not a scene in it without that man in it. and he still carries the whole entire thing, basically.
That's true,
except for the child scenes.
His character is in it.
Yeah, his character is effectively. But when Jimmy Stewart's in it, he plays old and young so well that it's believable. It's not immersion breaking, basically. You see that he kind of has this break of will, and he realizes that he's probably going to go to prison for a very long time and lose all of his children. I've complained in previous a podcast before about, it's not explaining the girlfriend, let's say in The Crow, and it doesn't flesh out this character. Like, these children have only been seen in this one scene, yet the way that Jimmy Stewart, like I have up the scene where Jimmy Stewart has his son on his lap and he's basically kissing him, and he's like,
even though he
looks terrified to fuck, and I'm like, wow, I don't need that kid story, effectively. I don't need to see the kid acting. It's all Jimmy Stewart acting for the both of them.
Yeah, and I think you also don't need to be a parent to feel what's happening there.
Yeah, no, I still felt it. I got it. I'd be clinging on to Mouse. I'd be like,
but there was no, like, how can I say, there was no, like, added stuff into his eyes to make him cry. You can tell that was pure acting. Like,
oh yeah.
But this is, man, everything he did in this movie, like, which I don't do anymore. I don't feel that for characters on screen. But this guy made you fucking feel so, like, you felt so bad for him. I was like, because when he's hugging on the child, you can see the child being crushed up against him. But he's
Jimmy.
In the end, I won't go too much, but in the end where your one is technically choking him as he's coming down the stairs. She's on his back, but she's hanging away. But you can tell he's been choked, but he doesn't care. He comes down, he's going. But that hug with that little boy, you could, like, it's not his son, but fuck, man. Like,
but again, even all
that you have it's kind of heartbreaking, to be honest.
All the children in it, like the child is like tossing stuffed tinsel on top of his head, and the daughter is playing the piano, and he's getting pissed off with everybody. He's like, I don't know how to spell hallelujah. Can you quit playing that damn piano? And shut up. And Mary understandably realizes that something's probably not right here. So she urges him into the back room and is like, what the fuck's going on, Jim? What's going on, Jim? And he's like, nothing. I had a bad day. And there's a cool little bit when he's going up the stairs and he rips the knob off the banister. And he's like, he's walking around, he's like, I'm sick of living in this crummy house, and the only Zuzu's upstairs because that's his daughter that's sick. She's probably sick in this drafty house, this damn, like, again, you like,
why do we have to have these kids?
Yeah, exactly. He turned around and goes, why do we have to have these damn kids? He's pretty much at the bottom of the barrel here. And it's a swift change in the character so much that you think, holy shit, a lot of pressure on this guy. So he goes up to his daughter upstairs, and she has this flower that she's smelling, effectively, and some petals fall off of the flower. And she asks him to put the petals back onto the flower, effectively.
Them back on.
But he puts the two petals in his ring pocket, the little pocket at the top, effectively, and said, "No, look, it's all stuck together now, perfectly fine." Cool little. It's not really a MacGuffin, is it? It's really like a cool little tie back to reality. Later on it comes into play, those two little petals. So the teacher, I think, calls up, or the mother, Mary, calls the teacher and says, oh yeah, Zuzu's not going to be in school tomorrow because she's sick. And I think they're giving out, there's a bit of an argument going on, and Jimmy Stewart comes in and basically tears the fuck out of her. He's like, you let her go home without any clothes on. We should be blaming you for this thing. I pay my taxes for you to be a teacher. And then the husband gets on the phone. And he has an argument with the husband. He's like, hello?
Anytime you think you're man enough, come up here and we'll sort it out.
But that's the thing. He's basically just making arguments with everybody. He's just like ready to pop. He goes into the living room after the telephone argument and flips over the table with the bridge on it. Who's making that bridge? Is that Mary? Was that Mary making
No,
it?
that was... no, it wasn't Mary. It was the child's train.
Oh, okay, right. I was like, who made that bridge? He then realizes, like, oh my god, what have I become? They're all shit scared of me. And the one at the piano was like, oh, Daddy.
I actually love that line. That's just, it's so classic movie type, classic speech,
right?
Dialogue, just like, oh, Daddy.
Oh, Daddy. Well, it means something different now to me as an adult. So,
I knew you had to say it.
Daddy. I don't have children, so again, I'm fine with saying things like that.
It means something totally different to me too, Jamie. I'm with you. I just knew you'd say it.
One hot mama. So he rushes over to Mr. Potter to strike up a deal. He's doing basically the thing that he would never have wanted to do and feels dirty doing effectively. And we know that from the previous meeting where he had that handshake, slimy handshake, and he was like, "Nope, I'm not even going to do it for profit." You know, and now he's actually having to do it to save himself, his family, and now everybody else in the town. So the only benefit he's going to get out of this is to break it even effectively. Mr. Potter is such an asshole here. So, right, we already know at this point that he has the money. Yeah? So Mr. Potter has actually gotten the money himself. And then he goes, oh, come on, what you do with it? Gamble it away? He's like, what an asshole. He's like, I have heard stories about you, running money and giving money to that adventurous lady. What are you two up to? I wonder. Oh, that's a little bit suspicious.
Knows giving money to Violet.
Right? And I'm like,
the whole town.
The whole town, all 7 of them. And I'm like, holy shit, like, what an asshole. And then he's like, well, I better do my due diligence as a citizen and call the marshal. And I was like, what the fuck? It's like, all of the things in the film to this point have kind of collided. A little bit here, the money. A little bit there for Violet. A little bit there for the setup for his disgust at having to go to Mr. Potter. And it just, boom, into one final bit. And this is a great explanation of how the act system goes in films effectively. We're already near the act of Act 2, and we have our great villain and our great problem. Our characters are explained, and everybody is set to make either a great comeback or a great failure. So it's all set up perfectly. So we're kind of we're more than halfway through the film at this point. Everybody's impression. What are we going on at the moment?
Gary?
Okay.
That's what I want to hear. Passing the buck.
I was waiting for you.
I said I'd leave you off because I'm always jumping in, so.
At this point, I think this is where, like I was saying earlier about the mental health side of it coming in, this is the point where he is breaking. And all these years of giving up everything that made him, like that, all those dreams, everything that was George Bailey, and giving up so much of himself to everybody else, it's finally, it's just the straw that broke the camel's back, kind of, and he's finally breaking and saying, I can't do this anymore. I have done this my whole life, and I get shit for thanks. And I think that's where he is.
And I completely agree. It's the culmination of all of these things in a person's life. This could be anybody. You could replace all of these responsibilities for anybody's responsibilities in life, and you could say absolutely. Like you raise the point of it being a mental health topic, and Darren's just killed himself. It's a mental health, and you know, I don't. Oh, he's dead again. I try and shy away necessarily from looking too much into the moral of the story, really, because really, if a film that is more than this is nearly 80 years old, right? If a film like this can still show someone like us nowadays the morality of things, I don't like to read too deeply into what that morality is necessarily. I like to just read into that character's morality and say, wow, what a great person or a great thing to happen in general. But this has a lot to offer in terms of, like you said, mental health. That probably at the time, it's not a subject that would have even been considered a thing.
Not at all. I mean, at the time,
not for a man either.
PTSD wasn't a thing at the time, so there's no way they were talking about general like depression and.
But you would shell shock, which actually was a condition that doctors thought, because of effectively the vibration of shells hitting the ground repeatedly over and over again, made people kind of shocked all of the time. It was actually a physical thing that happened because of the falling of bombs repeatedly over and over again. But it wasn't a mental, really thought of as a mental disability.
Yeah.
And now this is World War II, where you have more and more soldiers coming back absolutely fucked up from the things they saw, and it was more of an abstract thing. Darren?
I was just getting a glimpse of... I felt more and more sorry for him through the whole movie. Like, and every time you get it, like, they did what they were... Everything they planned to do, they got me with. Like, the little glimpse of hope that you got from him, you were like, oh, and then all of a sudden they take you out from under you. I'm like, fuck. So my whole process of the whole movie, Jamie, I thought what was going to happen was where I thought he was going to commit suicide, and I was like, oh no, they're going to, and then they're going to. I had a whole different ending to this movie completely in my head.
It's like Mo Sislak trying to stick his head in the oven every Christmas. Right?
Yeah. But I just think it's a terribly, it's a
poignant,
it's a sad, beautiful movie. But I just wanted I wanted the guy to catch a break, and I agree. It was the first, like, years ago. There would have been, you would never heard depression. You were just been told to get over it, hop on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this movie, fuck man, I don't even know if they meant to do it like that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. That is the thing, and that's what I'm talking about. It's so easy for modern films nowadays to put point the finger and say, hey, society, this is what you're doing wrong. But literally within 10 years, that's going to be an irrelevant point to have made, because it's so based in that time. Whereas something like as iconic as this film, let's say, has a lot to say, even in places where it probably didn't mean to say it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Technically, George has not a lot to be sad about. He's a great family. Everybody loves him. People can get into a depression state because of not necessarily bad things in their life, but because of things that they've chosen not to do. It's like life is full of things that you want to fulfill. It's a lot of fulfillment, and it feels like George hasn't gotten fulfillment, even though everything is going right effectively, except for this one part. This is probably like you said, the straw that broke the camel's back. But George just hasn't had fulfillment in his life to the extent that he wants it. And now he's been crippled over effectively.
He's lost his sense of person, because all that adventuring and the traveling, that was something that made him. That was who he was and who he wanted to be. So it's very much his sense of person that I feel he's lost. He's suddenly realized no one is thanking me for what I've done, and I've given up myself, and for what?
But it's a timeless message.
Absolutely.
Anybody can be in that situation, whether fucking phones exist and the internet exists, or whether literally you are a bank manager or basically a building society manager with that person's life is completely outside of my own life. I have none of those experiences, but can empathize in so many ways, because all of the feelings that he has are universal, and it's a universal film. And again, the fact that Christmas is in there is just that like cherry on top, you know.
And it's just
like
sitting there going, he hasn't asked for help. He hasn't asked for anything back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the core of it. When you want to relate it to a mental health issue.
What he's asked for is freedom. The one thing nobody can actually give him. The one thing he has to take for himself, and he's basically forgone himself throughout the whole entirety of his life. And the only thing now trapping him is money. So this is we'll get to that in a little bit, but you know, obviously money is a big thing in this. It's like the bank versus the people's bank. You know, that building society. So we find out that George has a $15,000 life insurance policy with $500 equity, which means that it's worth fuck all when he's alive. He's like, you want me to give you $8,000 on the equity of $500 when you're alive, and yeah, sorry, I can't do that. I'm gonna have to call the police. So George basically goes off and is like, okay, I have nothing to live for at this point. Well, no, he doesn't really.
It's a throwaway line from Potter, because Potter says, "You're worth more to me dead."
Effectively, and he gets
right there.
He goes to Martini's pub, the little pub, and the bar, and Martini's like, "Hey, come in!" And the bartender's really nice and helpful, and he's like, "Oh, you're drinking too much. You better go home. I'll get you some coffee. You know, we'll call you a cab." And George is like, "No, I want to." What was that? That was my Italian accent. Was it good? It's me, Martinio.
That was a great Jamaican accent.
It was better than the Chinese accent you did a minute ago.
I didn't do a Chinese accent. What did I do a Chinese? There was no Chinese people in this.
Exactly.
So George gets a little bit sad, and he this is okay. I've seen this film so many times and I always forget about this part. Foreshadowing in this film is done perfectly. Small little throwaway lines, like you said, Derry, are actually big plot developments in the film. He goes, Martini goes, "Oh, come on, Mr. Bailey, we gotta get you home." And then there's a random guy at the bar who goes, "Mr. Bailey? Who's Mr. Bailey?" And he comes and goes, smacks him in the face. He goes, "You ever speak my wife like that again?" And it's like, oh my God, the husband that he was speaking to like 20 minutes ago, let's say, he gets his comeuppance. Like the one indiscretion he does.
Martini calls him by name, and that's when you get the Mr. Walsh, I think is his name.
Yes, it's like the teacher's husband. I was like, oh my God, what a great setup. What a great setup, because it was literally in the mix of George's downfall. You're thinking, okay, he's just that's just something in there to show him being mad and angry and losing it a bit. But then it just comes back and bites him in the ass.
Yeah.
It's so well done. I love it.
If you're kicking a man when he's down.
Basically, like how bad could it get? Oh shit, yeah, fucked. So George gets in his car and drives it into a tree, and decides to take a walk down on the bridge. The snow.
Granddaddy planted that tree.
The guy comes out and he's like, "My grandfather planted this tree." He's like, "Yeah, it's like a fucking tree." It's like, calm down. So the snow in this is amazing. You know, the depth of snow. You know, the snow all the way in the background and the snow in the foreground and the snow in the middle ground. The screen is filled with snow, and I love the effect, and that's in effect itself a practical effect. You know, it's an effect that is basically a real effect, like nature. So
they didn't skimp on it anyway.
They didn't. Maybe it was snowing at the time. Who knows? So he gets to meet. So Clarence shows himself, and to prevent George from jumping in the river,
he jumps in.
Clarence jumps in instead, and he goes, "Help! Help!" So George jumps in after him and rescues him. And there's like a man in a cabin that goes out and like pulls him in and gets him dried off. And the guy in the cabin like is absolutely like absolutely regretting everything. I should definitely not have brought these two weirdos back into my cabin, because one chap is dressed in like this medieval shirt, and the other guy, like, he's talking about being an angel and everything. I love the guy's reaction, the guy in the cabin's reaction, like his facial reactions.
Yeah. It's very kind of Three Stooges-y.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
So we find out that that Clarence is reading a book, Tom Sawyer. Anybody?
I don't know the relevance of that.
I didn't either. I think it's because it's about a man or a boy that goes through something in his life to make him a better person. I've never read it. I don't know.
I know it's like an American classic, but I don't think many people here read it.
I was thinking of a guy painting a fence, but then I was like, that's Huckleberry Finn, I think.
Yeah, that is Huckleberry Finn.
That's Huckleberry Finn. So
with N-word Jim.
N-word Jim. Okay, N-word Jim. That's right. That's more like it. So Clarence explains that he's George's guardian angel, and he's come to show him that committing suicide is probably not the best thing to do. And again, like a really heavy topic, shown, like anytime suicide is mentioned, it's in the perspective of these guardian angels. It's mentioned first at the start with the guardian angels. It's mentioned, I think, the second time with the guardian angels, and now it's mentioned with a guardian angel there. So it's never mentioned in a realistic sense if you think about it.
Yeah.
It is mentioned in this, I don't want to say lighthearted sense, but this sense that
a distance. It keeps its distance.
A distance, exactly. It keeps its distance from reality when they mention these topics of suicide. But even when they say suicide, they're just like, yeah, you want to commit suicide? Like, don't commit suicide.
I found that strange, actually. It did seem like a very easy topic.
Yeah.
But I wasn't expecting it to be that easy.
I think at the time, people actually looked down on, like, that's why it's called committing suicide, because it was against the law. Your man even says it here. It's like, it's against the law to commit suicide. I always thought that was pretty funny, because who are you going to arrest?
Yeah.
Put him in the wagon, boys.
That was another thing. When I heard say suicide, I was like, oh, for back then even, you know what I mean? It's...
Yeah, you wouldn't be expecting it to be so.
Yeah, I didn't expect to hear someone say suicide in this movie. And when I heard him say it, I was like, where's this fucking movie going? What's he going to do to himself? I thought it was going to be a tragic ending. That's what I thought, honestly. I thought it was going to be a whole Old Yeller deal.
Old Yeller, bring him round the back of the chemical shed and blow that mother away.
I thought it was going to be a Marley and Me job here.
I've never seen that film. Oh, no, wait, the dog dies, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I cried at Marley and Me, but this is a whole other story. Like, this is bad.
It's like sadness upon sadness. Like, at the end, you want to burst. You're just like, oh no.
I grieved after this movie this time. It took me about an hour to recover.
So I will now move us on, because I think I'm just a little bit behind now. Yeah, just about there. To Act 3. The act has changed. Now we're on Act 3.